Hi everyone again. Now I'm moderating the panel on connected community future-proofing the city. And what we'll discuss really is how smart or not is Hong Kong, how can Hong Kong become smarter and more adaptable concerning all the stakeholders. So I have a fascinating panel here, everyone representing a different part of our community and the real estate sector. And I think what I will start with is for each of you, please introduce yourself, your business, and your thoughts on what do you define as the city of the future? Piers.
My name's Piers Brunner. I'm the CEO of Knight Frank Greater China. I've been part of Hong Kong's community for 20 plus years. It's home for me. Ariel, to be honest, I thought about city of the future, and I thought, and I really believe that every city has got a different situation, both from its history, where it is at, and where it's going to go to the future. But I thought about future-proofing. So as a good Englishman, I got out my Oxford Dictionary and I looked it up. And it's actually to minimize obsolescence. So how do we adapt to shocks and shifts in the system in the future? So I'm thinking about that, and I'll mention other things later on. So I'll leave it at that.
Hi, I'm Alex Katsanos. I run business advisory for Hong Kong and Macau for Arcadis. I think it's worth noting what our involvement is in future-proofing cities. We're mostly involved in smart cities. So we do strategy for smart city. And we've recently, you may know that we've written the blueprint for Kuala Lumpur. And we're also advising as smart city consultants operators in this city, mainly for greenfield districts, but also recently we're having a conversation about brownfield districts. About myself, I am not an Englishman. As you can tell probably from my good looks, I am Greek. And I've been in Hong Kong for 15 years. So please, I'll pass it to you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Paul Chen. It's really a pleasure to be invited today here. And my whole life actually working in MTR and retired now and as a consultant. So basically I designed the Octopus in Hong Kong, in fact, back in the 90s. And before that, before I graduated from UK King's College, I came back and started the first magnetic technology, which if you remember back in the 80s, even that system is designed by me. It's actually what they call a common story ticket, and which a card can actually travel and go into retail and buying things. So it's coming up, I think, so I said, first 2 generations now. I started magnetic technology and then IC card, which is the Octopus. Been working well, very successful for the past 22 years. Now I think it's coming into the 3rd generation now, which I still very engaging and deeply involved with that. And as a consultant, you can see China people doing very well on the mobile payment. Mobile payment, I think, is the 3rd generation. If you try to compare the 3G, 4G, and 5G, I think now we are getting into 4.5G now. So it's exciting era. I think I would like to answer more questions later on.
Hi, I'm Francis from Social Ventures Hong Kong. So we are a social innovation incubator and investor and investors as well in Hong Kong. So I think some projects like Diamond Cap, the first wheelchair accessible taxi in Hong Kong, Green Monday, a plant-based promotion movement spreading to 33 countries now, Light B, Light Home product, which is the very first affordable housing initiative. Right now we collected over 120 apartments, a few hundred families being benefited, originally living in the subdivided units. And then lately we have a project called Hatch. It's a co-working factory. We try to bring manufacturing back to Hong Kong. So I think to us, the future of city, I think hopefully we could build more compassion. And then also, I think it's not a me well anymore, not profit-driven only, but I think we hope that there could be more purpose-driven. I think instead of smart city, I think we need a city with wisdom. I think we need to put more thinking on not me, but we. So that's how we are seeing this.
Thank you. So I would like to read a quote from Knight Frank 2018 Global Cities Report.
Good on you.
Yeah, I did my homework. A city has to inspire and contain as much wow factor as a Google office if it hopes to draw firms of that caliber. So the question to all of you, how is Hong Kong ranking on that wow factor? Maybe Alex, let's start with you.
How is Hong Kong ranking on the wow factor? Perhaps a loud meow, I guess, on the wow factor. But before I came here, so wow factor in terms of smart cities, I understand, right? I would say that before I came here, I wanted to see where we rank because I was expecting this, to be honest. So I Googled smartest cities, and then I was expecting to see Hong Kong somewhere. But instead, what I got back is cities by average IQ. And surprisingly, not surprisingly at all, Hong Kong ranks at the top of that. So we should be doing better with the infrastructure of Hong Kong. Now, where we rank, it's difficult to say, but we can compare ourselves against benchmarks. And we're neighboring to Shenzhen. And we're also neighbors almost to the Guangdong region and Guangzhou and places like that, where the implementation of smart systems in real estate, but also in general management of cities, is pretty exciting. We've been talking to the Smart City Consortium, which we're a member of, and we have had the opportunity to see the management of, let's say, traffic in cities like that and how cities learn from things. So what we've seen as an example, because there's so many things I could talk forever, let's talk about traffic management. In Shenzhen, there's no human behind the traffic systems. AI, artificial intelligence, recognizes traffic patterns in the street. And before traffic happens, if you're in the street or you're driving and the road is 50% full, you're already being diverted into something better because the system now knows, after watching the street for about, let's say, a couple of days or a couple of weeks, that traffic is about to be generated. Now, we don't have systems like that in Hong Kong. So I would say we probably have the people here. We have the people that know about the technology, we have coders, we have the resources ready to do stuff, but I think we haven't gotten yet to the implementation stage. I think I would say that we're about in the middle of the wow factor.
Okay, my wow factor is actually as if I was arriving into Hong Kong. I think, first of all, the infrastructure is the first wow, because you come into the airport, you come on the Airport Express. The second wow for me is actually the cityscape and the harbour. But actually, I think there's a lot more to Hong Kong than that, and I think it was alluded to earlier. In terms of my personal wow factor is green space. So 75% of Hong Kong is green space. That is amazing for a visitor. Do take them out and show them around. In the report, actually, if I may just cover it, it does actually say that certain cities have certain identities, and it references, for example, Melbourne being the waterfront, Denver being lifestyle, Songdo in Korea being smart, the smart city. So I suppose the question is, has Hong Kong got that single one identity, or has it got multiple? And if it is, what is it? The other thing is, I do want to say, actually, in terms of wow, is probably, when you do live here, probably a cultural thing about the people, about education, about everything else to do with it. So that's the soft side of a city.
Yeah, I think the wow to me would be better. So I think relatively, I would say compared to many cities, I think we're smart enough. I think in terms of efficiency, transportations, I think we're definitely a good one. But I think, are we inclusive enough towards some of the disabled people? So I think we have a lot of capital coming in town. But I think, are we just put a blind eye to those people, 200,000 people at least right now, living under 7 square meter, 10 square meter. So I don't think we have a good diversity enough to build up enough solutions for these people. So in terms of resources, I think we're good at eating and consuming, but I think, are we looking into the waste that we have today? And also our diet actually creating a big problem for our public health as well. So to me, I would say way forward, instead of just keep on driving on the efficiency and more profit-driven way, can we see more beyond that? I think to me, that would be the real wow to me.
How wow factor is that, again, I'm talking about Octopus. I think for the past many years, I mean, this system is working very well. And without that, I don't think a lot of people in Hong Kong now, like the elderly, getting a $2 discount and everything, that I don't think can be done, honestly. This, I think, later on, I think there's some question about how can we sustain that, how can we're going to build more, and how can we shake it up, and all that kind of thing I will talk about later. Okay.
Stay with you, Dr. Chan,
Yep.
and continue to talk about Octopus because it is, as we all discussed, part of that smart city and that wow factor that Hong Kong has to offer. So you mentioned that Octopus has stayed with us now for 22 years. What is the next evolution of Octopus, especially in the context of you mentioned that in China almost everything now is cashless. They are in the cashless society.
Okay, this question pops up every time in conferences. I've been answered that for many times. Anyway, I try to answer it again. I think the British always say $6 million question. How can we, in the future, what we're going to do? I mean, 22 years now. I think I mentioned earlier that I think we are now in the nearly coming up to the 4.5G. Why didn't I say 5G instead of 4.5G? Because it's a generation and another generation. From nowadays, a lot of people talk about fintech, right? Finance technology. I think we had many years experience, on the smart card, smart city sort of concepts. And I see in the coming future will be more like open system, big data, AI. This will be the trend, I think. But nobody knows what the future like. But I think we can only predict, and based on our previous experiences, previous operational experiences, we can actually look at how the future behaves.
Thank you. And just to stay on that point, do you see Hong Kong, you mentioned Shenzhen, again, any points of competition in terms of, and how we kind of get to that point where Hong Kong can be sort of a more cashless society, if you will? Would we get there?
We will get there, definitely. I think in China, I think is a very different setup as compared with Hong Kong. Reason of that is a lot of people now basically no money in the wallet or in the purse, right? Basically, they use a mobile. Mobile payment become their day-to-day life. In fact, one interesting thing that I went out to Shenzhen, you talk about Shenzhen, I have $100 notes and try to have a lunch, and then it only cost me 75. And then he said to me, we don't have money to change. Sorry. You don't have the mobile payment, then you have to pay $100 instead. So it's going to get back to your question again. Hong Kong, I think we will definitely will catch up, and in the coming years. That's why I mentioned about open system. I think Octopus has been dominating the market for 22 years, and the reason for that is very simple, because at the time there's no competition. At the time, we had a system that a platform that Hong Kong people love and like. We kill Mondex. If you remember the Hong Kong bank Mondex, we killed them, and then we become dominant market for many years. But this time, pleasant, and the future, I think, will be coming very challenging. Will be open system, everything will come into like the Visa Way, Visa card, MasterCard, and QR code and Octopus. They will be all lumped together. Hopefully, I see it will be a very challenging future, and to have more innovation in it, and to build a much better smart city in Hong Kong.
Sure, thank you. So with that, question to Alex. You've worked with real estate developers and municipalities all over the world. You're advising on smart cities. What are your experiences of this definition and implementation of smart cities? Any success stories that you would like to share with us?
Okay, so definition, right, of smart cities. I've changed my mind over the years of what a smart city is. So maybe chronologically, I will tell you the wrong definition I had in mind before, which is not so updated today, and how we arrived at today. So the industry thought, let's say, about 10 years ago, when Masdar was being built in the Middle East, they thought that a smart city is a city that will incorporate all the latest gadgets that we have in technology in order to improve people's lives. So anything that existed, just put it in there. Throw in sensors and what is modern in urban planning, just put that in there. And they thought they didn't really have the demographic in mind because those were piloted projects when Masdar was happening, or the King Abdullah Economic District, also a very nice place. And without that demographic at hand, they kind of went for a Hail Mary. Let's build this shoeless Joe approach. Let's build this and people will come. They didn't really come. Those districts are not fully utilized at the moment, which was to be expected because they didn't think of the people. Now, about 5 years ago, cities like, let's say, Toronto, existing cities or brownfield places, they thought, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not a smart city. Maybe a smart city is where we understand who the demographic is, who are the users, and then we make a business case, and then we run a business case for certain features that are targeted directly to the demographic that we're catering for. Is it elderly people that live here mostly? Is it families? Who is it? And then incorporate those systems, and then you know, make the life easy for the people that this is for. And that kind of worked. I think I mentioned Toronto, and also, you know, Singapore is doing that very successfully, although they're progressing to the latest definition. But what smart city is now, it's a city that not only uses smart planning and new tech for the benefit of its users, but also treats the users like, let's say, if it was an organism, they are cells. So it treats the users to learn from them. So this is the new definition. It's a learning city. We didn't know that. But we didn't know that, and we can be excused for not knowing that because we didn't have social media. We didn't have Twitter and Facebook. So now we know that we can use me when I tweet something that says, damn, I'm stuck in traffic in Kwun Tong. We can use those tweets. We can crowdsource public data to try to understand where problems happen. I'm not just talking about sensors that see people's movements so that we can regulate where bus stops are. We can just understand by how people interact with the various social media or other platforms to try to understand how to better cater for them. I think a nice example, because you said some success stories, the Toronto waterfront, what they've done is they crowdsource, this is a very interesting case, they crowdsource photographs that people take and put them in their public profiles only. And they take those photographs, and from different angles, they use them through an AI software to generate a GIS platform for the entire district. Just from pictures, me with my dog or something like that, right? So they crowdsource all of those, and they hope to create a fully electronic platform which will be constantly updating because people never start taking pictures, right? So this is just an example of how we interact with the city. So 3 different definitions. The last one is that we're learning as people's changing habits feed into what we understand the smart city is and how it interacts with us.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
So the government of Hong Kong has just announced it's going to open up a lot more data sources as of December, 600 or whatever, different data sources. Does that help can it be used to create a smarter city for Hong Kong? That's to you.
That's to me, right?
You're the tech guy.
Yes. So, well, I connect with a lot of people. I don't really have the in-depth technical knowledge that I can advise you with. Yeah. But in reality, this is what the government has to do. Because the government has got finite resources. It's got 20,000 public employees that maybe have something to do with that. But I think what the government's learned, and it looks like it's learned that from other applications, is that in reality, our resources is not just government employees. Our resources are 7 million people that can use our data to do smart things to help ourselves. So, and not even 7 million people. 7 million people is just Hong Kong. People from outside can do applications and use this data. As long as we are very diligent as a government to collect them and put them in a place, in a structured way, so that people know how to use them. I think that's and they know that. They figure that out. I think a difficulty, and I'm sorry if I'm expanding too much here, a difficulty is that because we're interacting with government departments and with quasi-governmental agencies, sometimes even today, and I'm not saying that this is a leadership thing. I think this is like the government departments themselves. They're quite apprehensive about how much of this data should be shared. So I think the good guideline is, if it's not illegal, if it doesn't divulge, and if it doesn't contravene any regulation, and if it doesn't divulge anybody's personal identity and the daily habits, share it. You don't have to know what people are going to use it for. Just share it.
And then a question to you, Dr. Chen, building on this. I mean, you are an expert on AI and the new technologies. So what are the specific technologies that you're seeing in the realm of big data and AI that can be used to make Hong Kong smarter?
Okay. Again, this is a very big topic. I don't think within a few minutes I can explain all very clearly on AI and the big data. I think for my 30-odd years experiences in the railway, in the fare collection system, I think coming year, future, I think AI definitely will be a technology that can help to expedite, to make the people move faster, smarter in Hong Kong, particularly in the railway business. The AI I'm talking about is the facial recognition. I was in China many occasions meeting those people actually developing the AI particularly for the railway fare collection system, i.e. like getting through the passenger into the gate and so forth. They actually put in a camera there and then try to take your picture and then put into the system and then go into the account base. Right? Basically, you walk straight through. So that's why I keep on mentioning about 4.5G. I think when you get further, I think why have an Octopus? Why have a mobile? Basically, just free walking through the gate, and then at the end of the day, you are paid, like paying the Visa post-billing every month, that kind of thing. That will actually make the city much smarter. But again, on that note, I think there's a lot of issues need to be resolved, like data privacy, security, and so forth. So it's a topic I think to be debate for a few years in Hong Kong before I think actually can be implemented. That's my view.
So we talked about technology and kind of the success stories, but I have a question for Francis. In terms of the people aspect and in the drive toward a smart city, what are the challenges on the community level that you're seeing, and how can we be inclusive while technologically advanced?
Yeah, I think to many laymen, I think the term smart city, I think, would be very technology-driven and could be an opportunity for more capital owner, or it's more about how and what. But I think for this term, when we talk about the community, I think we have to ask more about why. I think while we are having a lot of efficiency, for example, food, I think we are always talking about how to feed animal in a better way, driving efficiency with a more technology products. I think right now, for example, Green Monday, we're advocating, can we change the future of protein? So right now, many people, the food tech companies, now focusing in on creating plant-based diet. So I think like Beyond Meat, Just Scramble, it's a very high valuations technology, but they are focusing in creating a whole new world with different type of proteins. Because right now, meat industry contribute as much as the transportations, all planes and cars adding together. It's around 13% of the total carbon emissions. But I think for meat industry, it's 14.5. So I think growing one cow alone, 1 year, is like driving for 70,000 kilometers. So I think seeing in this way, I think the Wisdom City will say, oh, can we create a different type of protein? Right now, like Beyond Meat, same taste of burger, but you get a better protein, but less cholesterol, and no antibiotic in there, but more calcium and things like that. So right now, Green Monday actually set up our own Green Monday Venture Funds to invest into our own fake meat as well. So if you're Hong Konger, get to know Omni Pork. It's the very first inventions locally in Hong Kong. Right now, spreading in Asia as well. So it's stimulating the minced pork. Beef consumed a lot in Western world, but Hong Kong people and Chinese, pork is very important. So I think right now, all those 5-star hotel chefs and saying that, oh, you don't need to teach me how to cook vegetarian now. I just use Omni Pork as the thing that I can just replace immediately. All those dumplings that you can enjoy the same taste, but better well. So I would say that right now, how do we use technology to build a more inclusive world? I think there are a lot of things that we have to put into account, put into the considerations on how we observe on what is happening in the field, the social issues. For example, the food crisis, the income inequality, climate change. I think that should be taken into account in all the things that we think about.
And with that, Francis, you mentioned in the beginning of our panel about some of the initiatives you're doing, like the co-working or bringing manufacturing back, which is really relevant for the real estate industry. So can you expand on those?
Yeah,
Thanks
for the airtime. So I think, definitely think that right now with the rise of impact investing, and many people talked about how business goes social, like creating shared value, the movement that we're promoting in Hong Kong called Business 2.0 is how to get business work harder for the community. Be it like home is a product that we get the private resources. Landlords rent their house to us without charging market rent. We rent that to some single mom with the young kids. It's a co-living concept. We never subdivided it. But it's proven that they rebuild neighborhood. And at most, they could live there for 3 years. But right now, among those almost 400 families in the past few years, average living time is 2 years. It's proven that we can do the empowerment and get them to stand on their own. So it's more powerful than we keep on finding resources, building new lands to build houses for them forever. But I think how to get them find a better job, live with each other, the co-living way. Hatch, the co-working factory. We are seeing that many more factories moved to China a long time ago, but now China is getting more expensive. And they say, hey, why not when we're selling the Hong Kong market, we get the operations back to Hong Kong. So I think right now at Kwai Chung, we built up a new factory. It's around 5,000 square feet. It's a co-working concept. So no one brand need to bear all the costs. So right now it's around 6 or 7. It's like the co-working space. So right now, apart from the efficiency, we got a playroom over there. All the women can tailor their own hour to back to work. So right now, the average employment rate for men at the right age is around over 95%, but women around 50%. So many of the women in the grassroots families, because of taking care of the kids or off the job for too long, they are not in the job market right now. So I think apart from getting the industrialization 4.0, the robot replacing us, I would say, can we get this workforce back to the women? At the same time, we do the empowerment locally. So I think that's the new thought we want to put into the considerations right now.
Thank you, Francis. And it leads me to my next question to the panelists. I've seen real estate developers and investors in the city are starting to build and reposition assets within corporate in some of those notions of smart building, smart city. Maybe we'll start with Piers again. What do you see in your clients?
Thanks very much. I think, look, we're slightly slow at adoption compared to other cities. I've seen developers spec a building extremely well, and that building then might be able to be sold on. And I think there's some good specifications going into the residential market. But what I don't see is revolution. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. Being an adopter of technologies and so on is pretty good. A few buildings that are built have got reasonable building management systems. It's been the bane of my life, actually, in Hong Kong, that they've been poorly used. But now they're being used a little bit. You'll know about this, right? They're being used a bit better. I mean, there are a few buildings around town that do have very smart glass and protective systems, depending on where the sun's going, individual air conditionings per unit. But in general, I'd say we're slow.
I agree with that 100%. I think our interpretation is that there's a healthy demand for commercial space. So developers don't really see the incentive to move to a complete revolutionary new design. The design that they have works, the demand is there. Now, we see some demand for smart cities, but it's not coming from commercial developers. The people that are talking, when we speak to developers about smart city elements and moving on to a smart city number 3 and stuff, they don't want to talk to us. But quasi-governmental authorities who want to influence policy are let's say the Urban Renewal Authority are the people that want to move some of this initiative forward, and they operate, they build districts, but also operators who own, let's say, a technology park with a greenfield site, or somebody who builds a new greenfield district in Hong Kong and is quite remote, and there's not one body in Hong Kong, there's more than one. They are the ones that are speaking to us and say, hey, what do we incorporate in here to make people come? Because, it's a little bit remote. So we have these new sites in Hong Kong which need to attract companies that are either into innovation or build labs, or they have some residential element, but they also have retailers, but they're not exactly the place that we immediately go to buy property. So they're talking to us because they think that and I think quite rightly so, they think that they can incorporate some elements that can be quite attractive. Something for the retailers, make it cheaper living, increase the mobility, and therefore will kind of like negate the negative effects perhaps of the remoteness and things. But not the developers, I wouldn't say so. No.
Dr. Chan or Francis, do you see in your line of work any parallels with the real estate community? Are developers or maybe government is coming to you, Dr. Chan, and saying, well, design the next generation of a smart city?
Let me say something. I think, yeah, indeed, yes. I think definitely, I think the government coming up will, as you read from the paper, that they put a lot of budget this year for people in the university actually getting more high tech and innovation into making a smart city. But in my area, I think definitely in a few years will be a big change. You wait and see.
I think for Light B, I think we did have an experience to work with the government on a project called Light Housing in Cantonese Samzang Ok. So I think it's actually we are utilizing an underutilized premises by the government. So we renovated. So immediately we got 45 units over there. So I think in the last few years, starting from that, I think that was mentioned in the policy agenda. Later on, there is a type of new housing varieties called social housing. It's been at least replicated by 6 NGOs. So that's how we see that government or big property owner actually can be a kickstarter of some new movement. So right now I have to say many landlords keep on spreading the word. In the past, putting the house idle, apartment idle, just keep it an accent is an option. But right now, okay, keep on spreading the word. If you have an apartment, putting idle anyway, you don't want to have some bad tenants, why don't you rent it out to some social housing operator? So that could be immediately utilized. So I think for long term, we need more lands, more houses, of course. But I think right now, we desperately need more interim solutions. So I think that's something that we want to find more quick solutions for that.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a fascinating discussion.
Thank you.